Hello, and welcome to this RSCAD FX tutorial video. This is video 4, providing further information on autonaming. Autonaming has been designed to help with uniquely naming components and signals in an RSCAD FX draft case. When autonaming is used correctly, components that are copied and pasted or taken repeatedly from the library will automatically have unique names that make it easier to compile without errors. First, I'll show a quick overview of how autonaming can be used to increment component names as I copy and paste them on the canvas, or as I take them from the library or quick access toolbar. It should be noted that autonaming works on a per component basis. By default, if I copy and paste a group of components, each component will have its name individually incremented. If I pull from the library in a new case, the component numbering starts from 1 and is subsequently incremented. When I open up the component parameters, I can also see that autonaming works on other parameters, not just the component name. Even if I have signal monitoring turned off when I copy and paste my component, autonaming increments the signal names. The user has substantial control over when autonaming does or does not increment a name. Details will be explained later in this video. Now let's dig a little deeper and introduce the central concept behind autonaming, the enumerator. Each instance of each component in RSCAD FX has its own enumerator. Autonaming works by incrementing the enumerator of components. If I open a component and look at the character fields, such as the component name or most signal names, I'll find that these fields have a small highlighted portion of the name. This represents the enumerator. When a character field containing an enumerator is not being edited, the enumerator shows the current value. When a character field containing an enumerator is being edited, I see that the enumerator is represented by a number sign, which is a reserved character used only for autonaming. In RSCAD's component library, the enumerator is included by default at the end of most character fields. The user, however, is free to move the position of the enumerator or even remove it from any character field they desire. Now, let's review the methods for turning autonaming incrementation on or off. This button in the Case tab toolbar toggles autonaming incrementation on or off. When on, component enumerators will be incremented during the copy and paste operation and when pulling from the library or quick access toolbar. When the button is pushed in one case tab, the toggle effect takes place in all case tabs. Watch as I pull from the library and copy and paste components when autonaming incrementation is toggled on via the toolbar button. Now watch as I do so when it is toggled off. Note that turning autonaming incrementation off does not remove the enumerator. It simply turns off the incrementation of the enumerator. The user has a lot of control over how the enumerator is displayed. Let's explore this a little. Every component that has at least one character field where an enumerator can be added will have a section titled Autonaming Settings in its component parameters. Several options for the component's enumerator can be set here. Note that the autonaming settings that can be modified here in this section of the component parameters can also be modified using a right-click menu. Selecting a group of components and making an autonaming related change to all of the components together is one scenario where the right-click autonaming settings menu is very useful. For the next part of the video, we will mostly use the component parameters menu as it is very convenient for quickly viewing changes. I can manually set the enumerator value for this particular component instance by entering a value in the enumeration value text box. From the program's perspective, the enumerator is an integer, but it can be interpreted as a decimal or hexadecimal number, or even as a letter, and those interpretations are previewed here. To change the interpretation used, I can modify the enumeration type dropdown. Watch as I copy and paste components with different enumerator types. The enumerator continues to increment with the given type, because the type property is being copied along with the component. If I click the Reset button, the current enumerator value will be reset to 0, and it is evaluated as an empty string. Copying and pasting the component after the reset will effectively start a new string of incrementing enumerators. If I want to reset the numbering of components taken from the library, I can right-click on any blank space and go to Reset Autonaming from Library. Specifying an enumeration string allows the user to include the enumerator as part of a more complex string with leading or tailing characters. The user is effectively customizing the enumerator to contain other characters in addition to the number sign, which will be incremented. Back in the Component Parameters menu, the enumerator still appears as a number sign representing the entire string. But when looking at the current value, we can see that that string now includes the additional characters that we specified. An important change in RSCAD FX from previous versions is that the suffix, or SFX parameter, has been removed from most library components. Modification of a component's enumeration string is now the recommended way to quickly add a suffix to a component's signals. When converting older RSCAD cases, which included components with a suffix, that suffix becomes part of the component's enumeration string property. Clicking Flatten Signal Names will flatten the current enumerator value into the parameter name. What was previously the enumerator is now incorporated into the non-incrementing parameter name. The enumerator is re-added to the end of the flattened string and is given a value of 0 so that it evaluates as an empty string. Copying and pasting a component that has been flattened with autonaming incrementation on means that the flattened name will stay static, while the new enumerator is then incremented. Flattening is helpful when copying and pasting a group of components with autonaming. Selecting the group, clicking Flatten, and then copying and pasting the group will result in a new group of uniquely named components. Each component can have autonaming enabled or disabled. When disabled, any character field containing the number sign will have that symbol evaluated to an empty string. Note that this does not remove the enumerator, and it does not stop it from incrementing. It simply evaluates it as an empty string. Watch as I demonstrate the disabling of autonaming by selecting a group of enumerated sources and then right-clicking and hitting Disable. Practicing with autonaming in order to effectively use it will result in significant time savings for users when building cases with many like components, bus and node labels, and signal names. This concludes the autonaming video. The next video is on the Scratchpad. The final video shows a walkthrough of building a very simple case in RSCAD FX. Thanks for watching and happy simulating!